2 million years ago, humans had already figured out walking, throwing rocks, and complaining. What they had not figured out was where to sleep when it rained. Tonight, our friend Og was about to learn this lesson the hard way. Again, this is Og, and Og is about to go looking for something no human has ever really had before. A roof, a wall, a place that isn't just outside. Og's family had always slept the same way humanity had always slept, outside, under whatever tree looked the least likely to have something living in it. It was, by any reasonable definition, terrible. Rain got in, birds got personal, and every single night, some distant howling reminded everyone that they were, technically, still just snacks with opinions. Every morning began the same way, soggy, sore, and deeply unrest. Something had to change, and, as usual, that something was about to be handed, unfairly, to Og. Og, Grog announced, in the tone of a man who had clearly already decided this before saying it out loud. Family needs a new home. You find. Today. Og looked around, hoping this was a joke. Nobody was laughing. Grog never joked, mostly because Grog didn't understand jokes. Mab, ever practical, handed him a list. Rock tablet, for requirements. Dry, spacious, safe from bears, and this one underlined twice. Not the same cave a bear already lives in. A surprisingly common mistake, apparently. And so, spear in one hand, rock checklist in the other, Og set off to find humanity's very first home. He had no experience, no plan, but he did have something almost as useful, absolutely nothing left to lose. Og's first idea for a home, a big, hollow log lying nearby. It looked dry. It looked cozy. It looked, in Og's expert non-professional opinion, perfect. Unfortunately, the log came with roommates. Roommates with wings, stingers, and extremely strong feelings about personal space. Home option 1. Rejected. Og crossed hollow logs off his mental checklist. Right below butterflies, which, you may recall, had also let him down. Option 2. A giant leaning rock, creating a little rock roof underneath. Dry? Check. No bees. Check. Og was feeling good about this one. There was, however, one small design flaw Og had failed to notice. The giant rock above him was less sturdy ancient boulder and more extremely large thing currently deciding whether to fall. Og dove clear a half second before the entire structure introduced itself to the ground. Home option 2, also rejected, mostly because it no longer existed. 2 attempts, 2 disasters, 1 angry bee colony, 1 collapsed boulder. Og was beginning to suspect that finding a home was significantly harder than his family had made it sound. And, as if the universe wanted to add a deadline to the pressure, the sky was doing that thing again. The thing where it turns gray and ominous and extremely rude. But Og was, if nothing else, stubborn. And somewhere in that rocky hillside up ahead, something was about to catch his eye. There, half covered in vines, tucked into the hillside like it was hiding from responsibility, a cave. An actual, honest-to-goodness hole in a mountain. Og had walked past caves before. Everyone had. But nobody had ever thought to actually go inside one. Mostly because dark hole in a mountain does not naturally scream cozy. Which, as it turned out, was a very reasonable instinct. Because something was already home. Behold, the previous tenant. One large, extremely unimpressed cave bear, who had been enjoying a perfectly good nap before some skinny stick creature started poking around his front door. Og suddenly remembered rule number 3 on his checklist, underlined twice. Not a cave a bear already lives in. In his defense, the vines had done an excellent job of hiding the occupied sign. Og's legs, once again, voted on his behalf without consulting the rest of him. The vote was unanimous, run. To be fair to the bear, it wasn't even trying that hard. Bears are not known for their sprinting enthusiasm. But Og didn't know that, and ran like his life depended on it, mostly because it did. He ran until his legs burned, until his lungs screamed, until he'd put an impressive distance between himself and cave option 3, previously occupied. Eventually, the bear simply lost interest and ambled home. Because honestly, chasing was a lot of effort for a creature who just wanted to finish his nap. Og, meanwhile, had never run faster in his life, and would be feeling it in his legs for a week. 3 attempts, 3 failures, a bee ambush, a boulder collapse, and a very personal introduction to an angry bear. At this point, most reasonable cavemen would have gone home and accepted a life of soggy tree sleeping. But Og didn't have the luxury of giving up. The storm, unhelpfully, had decided now was the perfect time to finally show up. And somewhere behind him, half buried in shrubs, something caught his eye that he hadn't noticed before. A second opening. Smaller. Quieter. No growling included. Having learned his lesson exactly once, Og approached this new prospect with the caution of a man who had just been personally chased by 400 pounds of grump. He checked every angle. He listened for growling. He even, at one point, gently lobbed a pebble inside just to see what would happen. Nothing happened. No roar. No eyes. Just silence and the gentle sound of a pebble rolling to a stop. This was either an excellent sign or an extremely bad one. Og took a deep breath and did the bravest, or most desperate, thing he'd done all day. He went inside. Inside was, actually pretty great. Dry floor. Roomy enough for the whole family, with a little room to spare. A small gap in the ceiling let in soft daylight, without letting in rain. It was, against all odds, exactly what the checklist demanded. Og checked every corner. No bees. No boulders threatening to fall. No grumpy bears mid-nap. Just quiet, dry, solid rock, wrapped protectively around him like the world's least fashionable blanket. Outside, the storm finally arrived in full force. Rain hammered the hillside. Wind howled through the trees. And inside, Og stood completely, gloriously dry, for possibly the first time in his entire life. Something clicked for Og in that moment. This wasn't just a hiding spot from an angry bear or a lucky gap between rocks. This was something new, something the world hadn't really had before, a place that was his. Theirs. A home. Not perfect. Mind you, there was one small leak directly above the best sitting spot. But compared to sleeping under a tree while birds used you as target practice, this was basically a 5-star resort. There was only one thing left to do. Go tell the family. Immediately. Storm or no storm. Og sprinted home through the storm, getting soaked instantly, tripping twice, and losing a sandal in a particularly aggressive puddle. He did not care. Not even a little. This was, by a significant margin, the happiest anyone had ever seen Og while face-planting repeatedly in the mud. And there they were. Cold. Wet. Miserable. Exactly where Og had left them, but somehow even soggier. Found it, Og announced, between gasping breaths. Found home. Grog looked at him skeptically. Given Og's track record, skepticism was a reasonable response. Grog, through a series of increasingly elaborate hand gestures, essentially asked, "Is it full of bears? Falling rocks? Angry bees?" A fair question, considering Og's day. No bears, Og promised. No falling. No bees. Just dry. The magic word. Grog's eyebrows raised. Mab was already walking before Og finished the sentence. They stepped inside. All 4 of them. Out of the rain, out of the wind, out of the reach of anything with teeth. For a long moment, nobody said anything. They just stood there. Dry. Together. Grog inspected the walls with the seriousness of a man reviewing a masterpiece. Mab sat down and didn't get up for a very satisfying amount of time. And Baby Ugg immediately tried to eat the cave, because Baby Ugg tried to eat everything. Grog gave Og a single, firm nod of approval, which, in Grog's very limited emotional vocabulary, was the equivalent of a marching band and a standing ovation. Within the hour, the cave had transformed. Mab arranged bedding in the corner with the fussy precision of someone who had clearly been dreaming about this for years. Grog started stacking rocks by the entrance, humanity's first, extremely wobbly attempt at a front door. And Og placed his little rock checklist proudly on a ledge. Every single requirement finally checked off. Dry, yes. Spacious, yes. No bears, extremely yes. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't finished. But it was theirs. That night, for the first time in the history of this particular family, possibly in the history of anyone, nobody got rained on. Nobody got pooped on by a bird. Nobody woke up to a howling wolf and a minor cardiac event. They just slept. Properly. Deeply. The kind of sleep that, up until this exact night, humanity hadn't really been allowed to have. Og didn't find this home with strength, like his father might have, or with careful planning, like his mother would have preferred. He found it through bee stings, a collapsing boulder, an angry bear, and a truly heroic amount of stubbornness. But he found it. And in doing so, he'd accidentally invented something that every single human after him would spend their entire lives chasing. For walls, a roof, and a good night's sleep. Somewhere out there, a very confused bear was telling his bear friends about a strange, skinny creature who screamed a lot and ran surprisingly fast. But that bear never came back. Because Og's cave, messy, leaky ceiling and all, was finally, truly, home. Thanks for house hunting along with Og today. Turns out finding the very first home in human history involved bees, boulders, and one extremely unimpressed bear. Thanks for watching. Support Og in his adventures journey.
Please like and subscribe me for more videos.